Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari and today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, which is, do you have free will, or are we just prisoners of destiny? This is actually a really interesting topic. You'd be surprised. There are actually proper scientists which will say that we have no free will, that there's no such thing, that free will is an illusion. This is a long-standing debate. Some people say we have no free will, and other people say we have free will. So what is the position given by Bhagavad-gita, by the Yoga Sutras, by the yoga tradition? And that's what we're going to be covering today. So let's get started. First of all, we have to talk about the concept of atma, of the self. So we have this term in Sanskrit, atma. And atma means the self. And this self is defined as the being, as the person who in fact feels and decides and thinks. So this ability to think, feel, and decide, these are coming from your transcendental nature, your atma, your very self. Now that atma quality, those transcendental qualities, a spark of the divine, of God, that ability is what makes you different from, say, any kind of object, a chair or a wall or a camera. That's what differentiates you from these objects, is that you have this atma, because your body is made of matter. Your body is made of the same thing as, this chair and these walls, etc. So your body is made of matter. But what's the difference between your body and these walls and these objects? It's because inside you there's the atma, and that's what thinks, feels, and decides. So the atma quality is the differential, the point that makes a difference. So atma is the concept we're going to be starting with. So in yoga, we talk about this ever-existing atma, which is just a spark of God. Okay, so we have the atma. So the atma, you'd have total freedom to decide and do whatever you want and feel, because you'd have full freedom as atma. But right now, we are stuck within this body. So we're within a material body. We're conditioned souls, and that's why we're practicing yoga. That's why you're here on this channel, because you want to figure out how to get out of this body and go back to your eternal form, your swarupa, to use the Yoga Sutra term. So you want to go back to your eternal rupa, your eternal form, so your swarupa. So to return to your original state of being is why we're practicing spiritual life, why we're practicing yoga and following Bhagavad-gita and Yoga Sutras. So right now, we're in trouble. We're within this material machine, this body, this thing made of matter. Now, because of that, we have also the effects of matter, which are called the gunas. So the proper term for the material energy in Bhagavad-gita, in yoga philosophy, is gunas. So the gunas are the three vibrations, strings, because guna means string. So the three strings that bind us in matter, that define and create all of matter. And you have sattva guna, raja guna, and tama guna. So according to the things you think, the things you say, the things you eat, your diet, the people you hang out with, the things you watch, your level of hygiene. So what I call in the 3T path, your lifestyle choices. So your lifestyle choices create an influence of these gunas. They define this guna mix. Is it going to be more sattva? Is it going to be more rajas? Is it going to be more tamas? And just to give you a brief idea, I'm not going to get into the whole gunas thing here, because it's a whole topic, by and of itself. But just a brief idea. Like, for example, that feeling when everything is calm, everything is nice, you just had a shower and you're feeling calm and centered and much better, that nice feeling, that's sattva, for example. You have clarity of mind, everything's more peaceful, that's sattva. Rajas, that feeling when you're in traffic, you're late, you're nervous, you're anxious, and like your mind is kind of like just going at 1,000 miles an hour. That's rajas. Rajas is this agitation, anxiety mood. And tamas is just, imagine like a person who's like completely drunk or stoned or just it's that kind of like almost dead. That's tamas, it's the mode of darkness. It's like, you can't think, you're just so stupid and dumb and violent. So that's tamas. So according to the lifestyle we have, we bring these influences over our atma. They cover our true self. And therefore, we are limited by the previous choices we've been making. So according to the choices you've been making in your lifestyle choices, what have you been eating, who have you been talking to, what have you been saying, what have you been doing? So where are you, your level of hygiene? According to these things will then now give you a more limited range of choice. Your mind is going to be behaving within the conditioning of these modes. And that's why changing your modes is so important. For example, why do we ask yogis, why do people on the yoga path stop eating meat? Because that's a huge influence for tamas. Meat is tamas, is tamasic food. So when you eat tamas, when you do drugs, when you drink alcohol, when you smoke a cigarette, these things are tamasic. These are dark things. So these are going to bring that very dark influence to your mind. It's going to limit your mind greatly. So that's why when people stop eating meat, when they become vegetarian, they feel like immediately, and it's a quick thing. I used to run yoga retreats in Pandava's Paradise in Brazil, and people would come there, and only after 2 days of just following, of course they'd also be meditating and they'd be walking in nature, but just after 2 days of a more sattvic lifestyle, they'd be like, oh wow, I'm feeling this, my mind, mental clarity, peace, harmony. Just in 2 days you can start feeling the effects. And that's one of the reasons I tell people to, take to the vegetarian diet, not eat meat, the non-meat diet, because you'll just feel so good. I mean, never mind that you're going to be healthier, that you're going to save the planet, you're going to save all those animals, lessen your risk of cancer and heart disease. Never mind all that. It just feels better. You'll just be happier. So, what else do you want? So, because it's sattva coming into your life. So your lifestyle choices are very important. That's why in my book, The 3T Path, I emphasize lifestyle, because as Krishna does in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna dedicates 2.5 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita to this topic of the gunas out of 18 chapters. Why? Because it's so important to get sattva right, so then you can expand your liberty, your freedom of choice, your ability to have more free will. Your will becomes freer as you have more sattva. So the gunas are there, and they bring this influence, which is limiting according to your past actions, but which you can change, and then quickly they can start bringing you effects right away. Okay, now we have to introduce another topic. Second topic, samskaras and vasanas. So the Yoga Sutras also tell us about the samskaras and vasanas. And what's that? The samskaras, I've done a whole video on that here, and I'll probably leave a link for it in the description of the video here. But the samskaras are the subliminal registers. So what Patanjali explains is that, whenever you do anything, say anything, think anything, you create these subliminal registers. And as you repeat certain actions and certain, patterns of behavior, these accumulate, these samskaras accumulate, and they create a tendency, which is called a vasana. So as you repeat something, that's why habits are created. As you keep repeating something, you create a vasana. Now, these are more long-term things. That's why when you were born, you weren't born a clean slate. You were born with all your previous samskaras and vasanas. And that's why people are born already with a certain tendency. You can even have like twins, and the way, twins, like one has a certain tendency, this one has a certain tendency that way, because they have their previous samskaras and vasanas. Now, the samskaras, they take a little longer because there's so many of them that it takes a long time to change them. So that's why, for example, in the language of the Yoga Sutras, what you're doing in yoga is creating these new samskaras of connection, of yoga, of just spirituality, and you're replacing these old samskaras of mundane thinking. He says you burn them. You burn these old mundane samskaras. He uses that term, you burn them, because it's like seeds. You want to burn the seed. It's the only way for the seed not to fructify. So you burn these previous, and that's why it takes a long time to become enlightened, like to really like elevate your consciousness. It's a process because you have all these samskaras. So your free will is limited now because you have all these samskaras to deal with. It's a longer term process of change. The gunas, very quick. Again, in days, you start feeling the effects, in days. And that's why people like going to retreats, or, I'm going to go to this ashram, because boom, right there, completely different set of gunas. You stepped out of, you were in your life, you went to the ashram, completely different. And then wow, amazing. You really feel that immediate change. Of course, then you have to deal with your samskaras, and then, things aren't so rosy. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to do this for the next, 40 years. Then you have to deal with yourself. So it's a longer term process because you're dealing with the samskaras and the vasanas. So that's the longer term process. And then of course, the third thing we have to talk about when we're talking about free will or being a prisoner of destiny, we have to talk about the law of karma, of course. So the law of karma is telling us that, according to what you do, you're going to have a reaction. And that reaction can be really long term. You could be suffering a reaction in this life for something you did 1,000 years ago. Because that's how karma works. Karma isn't like, bada boom. It's not like you did this, boom, that happened. No, it could be, and that's why you see people who are like kind of evil, like they look like they have a good life. Like, this guy is such a corrupt, horrible person, but he's still wealthy and rich and, getting reelected. So, and you're like, how was such good karma? What's going on? It's because the bad karma catches up with you later on. You don't know when it's appropriate. There's a whole system. So it will catch up with you later. Like it's an IOU. And, so of course you can burn karma. That's a yoga technique we have to practice. Jnana yoga, Krishna teaches in chapter 4 of Bhagavad-gita. But we're not going to get into the whole law of karma thing right now. There's a whole video in this channel about that if you want to find out more. But anyway, so you have the law of karma, which also binds you and restricts you according to your previous choices and your previous actions. So let's try to, come out with some conclusions regarding these three things. So conclusion number 1, materially, yes, we are a little bound. We're more bound than we'd like to think, actually. Yes, we'd like to think we're so free and we can do anything and decide your life, but actually, we're a little more restricted than you might want to acknowledge, because we're restricted by the gunas, which can change quickly, by the samskaras and the vasanas, which don't change very quickly at all. Basically, you kind of like, it takes like a lifetime, and you're restricted by the law of karma, which again, we're also trying to, we can burn our karma seeds, but it's also a process. It takes a while. So this lifetime, it's a little more restricted. So materially, we're more restricted than you might want to acknowledge. On a second conclusion, though, is that mentally, we have much more freedom. So the way you interpret your life, so you might be stuck in a certain general course of life. For example, I'm not going to sprout wings and go off flying. I'm not going to become, 6.5 foot tall. I'm not going to become, these things won't happen. I'm restricted to this body. I'm restricted to lots of things that are restricting me. So materially restrictions, but mentally, how do I process, how do I interpret the life that I'm living? That I have almost unrestricted ability to change. So my mental freedom is much greater because it depends much more on the gunas. on the way I'm living, my lifestyle choices, the way my knowledge, the way I see the world, the way I shape my intelligence, how I nurture my intelligence with yoga knowledge, with jnana, and then I change my lifestyle to a sattva lifestyle, a sattvic lifestyle. And doing that, that's what my students do, that's what I teach, and that's what you can do as well, and see the results. It's an amazing result. You can really like completely change your life. Your experience of your life can completely change. You have this amazing power to change the experience of your life. And this is available for everyone. And this is what I try to teach here in this channel in my book, The 3T Path. Okay, so we have quite a lot of mental freedom, but again, it just takes a little bit because you have to adjust your choices today. All your choices have to be lined up in sattva. But then the third conclusion we can take here is that spiritually you have 100% freedom. No matter who you are or what you are, you can decide right now that you want to become enlightened, that you want to reconnect with God, that you want to, take shelter of God. That can be done immediately by anyone. So the spiritual freedom is unlimited. Everyone, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, even the most sinful person can become enlightened in this life, Krishna says. So, that most sinful person can't just decide that they want to be a billionaire, or that they want to fly, or that they want to, become a genius. They can't, they're limited, but they can decide, they can become enlightened in this life. So we have 100% spiritual freedom, which is the most important, the only one that really counts. So that's the good news. So I hope you understood that, those three levels, those three conclusions, and the things that bind you here, the three levels of things that bind you here as well, the gunas, the samskaras, and the law of karma. And of course, with this knowledge, with the yoga, with the knowledge Krishna gives in Bhagavad-gita and that Patanjali teaches in the Yoga Sutras, you can become free of all these things and live a wonderful life. And of course, by the way, speaking of Yoga Sutras, this wasn't but my Yoga Sutra course is now complete. When you join my self-realization course, now you can have the whole Bhagavad Gita course and this whole Yoga Sutras course. They're both now fully available, so make sure you check that out. Anyway, have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.